Mr. Hoyer. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack, for his question.
I thank the chairman and welcome Mr. Carr again to the subcommittee. And you and I are going to carry on a conversation that we started last year. If you recall last year, I was discussing the fact that my father, who'd been in broadcasting for over 70 years, was in the process of winding things down and retiring. He's now 90, sitting at home, watching a lot of television and calling me. He retired, but he also took his stations completely off the air. And there are reasons for that I won't go into here. But it just reminds me of just how important local broadcast stations are. And I can probably speak for everybody on this panel. We all have them, and they perform a valuable service that far too often we're losing today. The coverage of local news, weather, sports, those kinds of things. We've had communities hard hit by major disasters where people would normally tune to their local stations to gather vital information and the like. Now that you're chairman, and I recall what you said last year, that if we care about these broadcast operations, we should care about the regulatory environment. Now that you're chairman, what can you say about the FCC's approach to making sure that our local industry is healthy and prosperous and worthy of investment?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman, for the question. I think that the best way to describe my approach to media regulation is to look to empower the type of local broadcasters that you and your father epitomize. I think there's a lot of concern in the country right now, which we can talk about legacy national news media, and there's a lot of distrust there. But there's a tremendous amount of trust when it comes to the local broadcasters, and that's what we need to empower. And I'm very open-minded to that at the FCC, and there's ways forward that we can do that. I'm reminded of a story. I was in a small town, Cody, Wyoming. I visited a local radio station. They had, real journalists, real reporters there providing local news, local information. And a few miles down the road in Powell, Wyoming, there was a broadcast station that didn't have the opportunity or the scale to do that. And so they had a Dell laptop effectively pumping in music from Chicago. We have rules at the FCC that said the Cody, Wyoming operation could not expand and bring localism to Powell, Wyoming because of these outdated FCC media ownership rules. So that is one thing that I'm very open-minded on and would like to take on in my time as chair, is reforming the FCC's media ownership rules.
I think that's an effort well spent. Let's talk budget for just a minute. We got the skinny budget. I didn't see anything from the FCC in there. We've already talked about the buyout options and the projections of whatever percentage of the workforce is going to go away. And let me just say for the record, I agree with the president's approach in trying to rein in the massive spending that happens in a place like this. But when are we going to see a number, and what can you live with if you're free to tell us here this morning?
Well, thank you, Congress. I've no news to break on the timing. Again, currently we're operating under a $390 million CR plus additional funding for our auctions program, and we are on very stable, comfortable financial footing. Again, we've had a reduction in FCC FTEs, but that has not held us back at all. We've had a very, very busy 100 days, and I'm very comfortable with wherever the number lands as between the president and you here in Congress. We'll be able to deliver on the FCC's mission.
And then finally, you mentioned robocalls. I guess everybody up here has been the recipient of a number of constituent calls regarding robocalls.
Yeah.
Why is it so difficult for us to be able to deal with this nuisance that continues to plague our country?
Yeah, this is exceptionally frustrating. This is probably the number one issue that I hear about. We have a very significant work stream at the FCC, and as you heard from Chairman Ferguson, the FTC last week, they're also working on it. We're going to continue to deepen that relationship with them. It's a challenging technical issue. Once you solve one issue in terms of how these calls are coming in, it pops up in another way. So we're been doing a bit of whack-a-mole, but we're also putting in place a better technological system across the board. It's called Stir Shaking. It's a call authentication framework. There's some gaps, including because if you're not on a modern network, that authentication system doesn't work. But we've just sought comment on how do we deal with that when calls traverse old networks as well. And so we're both doing a whack-a-mole approach, but also trying to put in a system-level way of addressing it. And we hear loud and clear that this is what people want us focused on.
You know, the challenge we have now is that these operators are using local numbers.
Yeah.
So that when they show up on caller ID, it looks like a local call. And so the predisposition of the constituent is they want to answer that because it's coming from a local number. But boy, they have figured out ways around our regulatory process, and I know it's a work in progress, but I thank you for being here today.
No, thank you. We'll keep at it.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Womack. The chair now